Hello, I'm Adam Binnie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday the 16th of October. And is there a shock return for Rangers?
Steven Gerrard went, I think, today from something like 20 to 1 down to even money just in the space of half an hour. And that got a lot of people talking, thinking, wait a minute, Steven Gerrard's back?
Steven Gerrard, the bookies' favourite again, but is he really back in play? One potential candidate has played down any suggestion he's going anywhere.
We've got enough to be getting on with at our own side. We're only talking about Hearts, trying to stay top of the league, taking the good from my last minute derby winner and now concentrating on the next challenge.
We'll talk more about Derek McInnes and Hearts as the league leaders prepare to return to action, and Glasgow City, we're in European action.
The full-time whistle. Glasgow City have secured European knockout football, their 20th year of European competition, and it's going to be a historic one.
An incredible finale sends the Scots through to the last 16 of the inaugural Women's Europa Cup.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And I'm delighted to say this morning we are joined by former Hearts and Dundee United manager Robbie Neilson and Herald football writer at large Stephen McGowan. Robbie, I notice a tracksuit on this morning with the initials. Can you tell everyone what you're up to these days if they're not too familiar with your career path?
Yeah, hi Adam, how you doing? I'm over at SK Lommel in Belgium at the moment as assistant head coach. So interesting year so far. It's been sitting fourth in the league, so doing pretty well.
Superb, and a busy time as ever for yourself, Stephen. I can imagine international breaks usually as journalists think it's a bit of a time off, but I don't think it's been quite the case this time round, has it?
No, the usual inquest. Even when we win, there's an inquest these days. So never a quiet, dull moment in Scottish football.
And of course, where else to start, lads, than the saga of Rangers' search for a new head coach. Yesterday, it suddenly appeared that Steven Gerrard was back as the bookies' favourites. No one really seen that plot twist coming, but how much can we read into that, do you think, Stephen?
I don't think you can read anything into the Steven Gerrard bookie situation. Nothing has changed there. He is still out of the running. Doesn't take much to change the bookmaker markets. It can just be a couple of people lumping on money and then the bookies react. With regards to the general situation, I think all roads now probably point to Kevin Muscat. I mean, last night, of course, we heard the news that Danny Rowell had withdrawn from the process. You're never really sure whether he has withdrawn because he really has decided the timing is wrong or whether because he now realises he's not going to get the job. So I think we are pretty much in situation where it's reducing all the possibilities. I mean, Sean Dyche didn't want to be considered. Steven Gerrard withdrew himself in the process. We have Danny Rowell, who was another favourite, withdrawing. I know there's been a bit of chat about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Michael Carrick, I know, is not in the running. So we really are getting down to the bare bones, and I think supporters are pretty anxious for an answer now, Adam.
Stephen, is that a bit of a concern perhaps to the Rangers fans? That's, two candidates this week who have taken themselves out of the running for this job?
Well, I think it definitely does add to the slight air of turmoil around the whole situation. It's never a great look. What we don't know is, Rangers are very keen for it to be known they're speaking to multiple candidates. So what we don't know is whether there is a rabbit in a hat which hasn't been whipped out yet. Usually these things would tend to be out by now. I know Rangers spoke to candidates in London last Thursday. But of course it's a concern if people are distancing themselves from the job. But as we say, we don't know if they're distancing themselves, in the case of Danny Rowell, certainly, because they know they're just simply not getting the job, which is quite often the case in these situations.
Do you think supporters have a right to be quite frustrated with the length of time this appointment is taken as well, Stephen? It's just a couple of days until Rangers return to league action. We don't really have any sort of clear picture as to who's going to be leading the Rangers team out at Ibrox on Saturday.
Well, it gets a lot more complex, of course, if it is Kevin Muscat, because as we know, he is in a title race in China. He won't be available to the end of November, which would add to the slight kind of angst and clamour and uncertainty around the situation. They could, of course, appoint an interim manager. There's been a bit of chat about Neil McGowan coming in to lead things. As things stand at the moment, as far as we know, Rangers will be led out by Stevie Smith. So, you can understand the slight anxiety of supporters with the situation because, I suppose you could make the case that as things stand at the moment, they could just about pull themselves back into the season, but with every passing week, that becomes more and more difficult.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, Stevie Smith's been taking some of the training this week during the international break. He's, of course, got a role with the under-19s. Robbie, is Stephen Smith someone you would have played against him, I guess, in the early 2000s? He's someone that you know a bit about in terms of his coaching level and what he was like as a player, what he could potentially bring to Rangers in this very short spell, if it is to be him this weekend?
I think it's obviously a worrying period at the moment for Rangers because, as Stephen said, there's still an opportunity to try and get back in that title race. So appointing the managers as soon as possible is paramount, to be honest. But I think Stevie's got experience, obviously, as a player within the league. He's played at the club. He'll understand the kind of structure and the relationships that are in there. But it will be difficult for him at this moment. Obviously, he's stepped up to the level, which is a very, very high level to coach at. I'm sure he'll be doing fine, but ultimately he's not going to be the guy that leads Rangers forward. I think it's paramount that they get someone as quick as possible, but it has to be the right decision because the previous decision obviously has turned out to be the wrong one. So I think, yes, everyone wants things done yesterday, but getting the right decisions is really key.
Are you surprised, Robbie, that it's taken so long for an appointment?
It's to be honest with you, no, because I think it's a very difficult thing to get the right manager mid-season. I think at the end of the season, obviously, you get time to get someone in, have the conversations and the process proper. But I think mid-season, you're potentially targeting managers who are either out of a role because they maybe failed at the last one, or guys who are in, like Kevin Muscat, who's in a title race at the moment. So if it takes an extra 2 or 3 weeks, you're better to take that just now than make the wrong decision again.
Robbie, you've obviously managed in Scotland, managed against Rangers, managed at a top level. What do you think Rangers need? What's the kind of profile of manager or head coach in this case that you think the club should be looking at?
I think that the game is obviously evolving as years go on. Now we have sporting directors, technical directors, directors of football. But I do believe that Rangers and Celtic and the bigger clubs, they need a manager, although it might be the head coach term. I think they need a leader. It has to be the front because you're bringing in, most of the players that you're bringing in are established, potentially international players. You don't need to take them out on the training pitch and show them how to hit it with their left foot and how to hit it with their right foot and how to do the basics of football. You have to lead. You have to be the front of the club. And I think that's what Rangers need. They need someone, yes, that can do the tactical work, but they can employ people in the background, an assistant, a first-team coach that can take the tactical and technical stuff. You need someone who is a figurehead that knows how to win games, that knows how to lead people, that knows how to lead football clubs.
I think that was a disappointment, no, Adam, wasn't it, Robbie, with regards to Steven Gerrard, because I think supporters felt that he did bring the aura, he brought the kind of presence, the quiet authority that they're really looking for in that job, and he's shown that he could do it before to some degree. The question with him was obviously his record since he left Rangers, but he looked like the safest pair of hands, which is why I think there was excitement briefly when it looked like he might be back in the running. Sadly, that's not the case.
Yeah, Steven Gerrard was certainly, I guess, the fans' favourite, the fans' choice if they were to pick. Certainly if you use social media as a gauge for that. It now appears though that Kevin Muscat, he emerged as the kind of front runner for this role yesterday. I think a lot of Rangers fans would be quite excited by that as well. Again, if social media is anything to go off, but this seems to change on a daily basis. Stephen, just to go back to an earlier point you made about Muscat, of course, he's still in a job, he's in a title race. How difficult do you think a period this could be for Rangers if it is to be Muscat, if he is to be offered this position but isn't able to be released from his post in China? What do Rangers do between now and the end of November?
Well, first of all, it's a difficult deal to do because, he has 1 year left in his contract, so therefore there will be compensation, 7-figure, talk of a figure in the region of 1.6 million, so they have to get that done first of all. But there's certainly suggestions that his current employers are already looking elsewhere for a replacement, so that's why the kind of arrows point towards Kevin Muscat. But in the interim, to go to your question, they have to steady the ship. They're just not winning games, and I think a familiar face, a Neil McCann or something, would just bring some calm to the situation. It would give the fans a bit of certainty. It would get people off their back to some degree. And that does appear to be a bit of a priority at the moment, because it almost feels at the moment as if names are coming out as if it's some kind of deed poll to see what the fans think. And if the fans don't particularly like it, then there seems to be a sensation that they slightly back away from it a little bit, as we saw a bit with Danny Rawls. So, yeah, there does appear to be definitely a determination to give the fans something that will please them and just bring some stability to the situation just now, because it's badly needed.
Just before we move on from Danny Rowe, Stephen, were you surprised that he pulled out of the race?
Well, I don't really. I don't know if I would say surprised or not surprised. I think it's just the case that he wanted an answer by the looks of it, and he wanted a positive answer. It looks a bit like he's kind of spat the dummy out the pram a wee bit, but he was a young man. I don't think supporters are particularly unhappy about him pulling out. Some people would have seen that he did perform a bit of a minor miracle at Sheffield Wednesday. But I think there was always that concern for the reasons Robbie outlined earlier about his profile, about his age, about his ability to go and lead a real huge institution of a football club. So I don't think there's huge unhappiness about him pulling out. Surprise, probably, because he's out of a job, and you would have thought he would have wanted to hang in there to the bitter end.
Yeah, Muscat still in contention. Stephen, to your knowledge, any other names that are still in contention?
No, as I say, I mean, there was that interesting snippet, wasn't there, just the other night about Paul Scholes, where there was a candidate which had not been named in the media, he said, who had spoken to Rangers, and that threw up some speculation about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and also some Michael Carrick speculation. As I said earlier, Michael Carrick's not in the frame, so Solskjaer is an intriguing one, but we don't know whether, as I say, there's another rabbit in the hat that's about to jump out at the moment. Certainly, Rangers are managing to conduct negotiations reasonably quietly. I'm sure that won't continue for very long.
Yeah, Derek McInnes is a name that always seems to come up when Rangers are searching for a new manager. He kind of played down any suggestion of that when speaking to Brian McLaughlin yesterday. He's turned down a move to Ibrox before when he was manager at Aberdeen back in 2017. Robbie, what's that like? I'm sure you've been in that situation before where you're trying to focus on your own job, trying to focus on the game at the weekend, and you've got to come and face guys like Stephen and myself in press conferences on the Friday, and people are asking you about other jobs. Is it quite difficult to deal with all of that, or do you find that just part of the job?
I think it's just like that Derek's an extremely experienced manager, and he can bat it off and focus himself on the game at the weekend. I think that when you're a manager, if you're doing well, you're getting asked a lot of difficult questions. If you're not doing well, you're getting asked a lot of difficult questions. If you're in that middle area, it's pretty boring. There's not a lot to do. So, I'm sure, like Derek said, a fantastic start to the season. If you're looking at the two clubs at the moment, yes, he's got huge history with Rangers having played there, but he's got an unbelievable opportunity here at Hearts at the moment, to really do something that, it's not been done for generations. So I think his full focus will be on that. And it's credit to him and credit to his staff that he's getting talked about, in terms of the Rangers job. But I think he'll be fully focused and there'll be no issues at all when he goes down to Kilmarnock, because he's got his personal motivation for that one, having left there in the summer.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? I was just going to say, Adam, that it is interesting because normally, if a Hearts manager has been linked heavily with Rangers, you might think it might happen. But if you were Derek McInnes right now, you wouldn't be sure about leaving Hearts for Rangers at all, because what's happening at Hearts is really exciting. There's this huge instability at Rangers, and I think he's very careful with his career. So I think even if the question was asked, and it probably should have been, I don't think there's any certainty at all that he would have been particularly interested.
No, certainly not. Hearts going ever so well at the start of this season, top of the table, undefeated, 2 points clear, just off the back of an Edinburgh derby victory as well. Robbie, when Derek's not being asked about his own future, he's been asked about title talk. That seems to come up as well. How long do you think Hearts can keep this up for? I'm not saying are they going to win the league, but do you think they can sustain a challenge for perhaps a little bit longer than we saw Aberdeen do last season?
I certainly think they can. I think that the key thing that the Hearts this season is the squad, and I think that's always the issue you have out with the old firm, is that when you get to 15, 20, 25 games in, you've had guys who have played all these games and are starting to fatigue, and you don't have the rotation of the squad. You might pick up some injuries, but when I look at the Hearts squad now, almost 2 top players for every position. So you would expect them now to, if they have these issues late in the season, because it's generally, most teams, it's December, January when they start to fall away a little bit, as the schedule starts to get a bit more hectic. I think Hearts will get the quality to rotate that. And also when you look at in my opinion, the gulf between, eventually it probably will be Rangers and Celtic and Hearts. Hearts can beat everyone else within that league and take points off those two. Mm-hmm. So the bigger the gap gets, the more chance they've got of maintaining that. So it's a real interesting challenge at the moment. And I think, again, with Tony Bloom being there, when they get to January, will they spend again? And I think if they're in a position where they can push, I think they'll do it again. So, yeah, going back to Derek, it's a fantastic time to be there.
Yeah, Tony Bloom was kind of laughed at by a lot of people in the summer for saying that, Hearts could split the Old Firm this season. But, Robbie, is it looking like Hearts actually do have a chance of doing that? Certainly if you look at the table just now, it would suggest so.
Yeah, when you see what Tony's done, firstly at Brighton, but then also at Union Saint-Gilloise, he's managed to take a team, Union Saint-Gilloise, from like the second, third division of Belgian football and take them into Champions League football. So he's got a history of doing that. I think, to do it right away in the first season would be very, very difficult. And I still think it will be, because I think it will take a few windows to really bulk that squad up and get the quality within that and the belief. But, if you're looking at the table at this moment in time, unbelievable opportunity, not just to split the Old Firm, but potentially to take over the two of them.
Stephen, do you think Derek McInnes will get a nice warm reception when he returns to Rugby Park on Saturday evening for the late kick-off?
I don't think he owes Kilmarnock anything, really. I think he did a really good job there. Maybe last season wasn't as fulfilling as he might have liked it to be, but he'll know what he's getting into, that's for sure. And I mean, the thing with Hearts is they've shown that they can do it various ways. They've won games in style, they've won games in the last minute, they've shown a bit of dig when they've needed to, and I think they'll need that, because I think under Stuart Kettlewell, Kilmarnock have been really one of the surprise packages of the season so far. Seem to have recruited well. Always a difficult place to go, obviously, on the surface. So you'll know what he's getting into. But I think Hearts really have the bit between their teeth. I think it'll get interesting probably about January. I think they feel that they have to go 2 rounds of full fixtures against all the teams before you can really make a judgment of whether they are serious challenges or not. That'll probably tell us more than at this stage. But yeah, they need to keep going. But I think the game everybody's looking forward to, licking our lips, is that Celtic game at the end of the month, isn't it? Derek McInnes says he can't look that far ahead, but I think when Celtic go to Tynecastle, I think on the 26th, that's going to be a really telling fixture.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've obviously got this weekend's fixtures to get out of the way first. There's obviously some European matches for some clubs as well next week. But that game you speak of, Stephen, Celtic visiting Tynecastle, do you think this could be a moment where people start to go, do you know what, this Hearts team mean business if they are to go and give Celtic a bit of a scare?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody, as Robbie said, it's a bit too soon for Hearts. I don't think anybody could have anticipated that Celtic and Rangers would be quite as unstable as they have appeared to be on the pitch this season. I mean, Celtic obviously had that big win just before the international break when they managed to overhaul it against Motherwell, but still don't look entirely convincing. They need to get through to January and they need to kind of fill the gaps in the squad they failed to fill in the summer, to the chagrin of their supporters. But until then, there's a real opportunity for Hearts to get their foot in the throat of the Old Firm and to really make a compelling challenge. And it's going to be fascinating to see whether they can do it.
Yeah, it certainly is. Meanwhile, Glasgow City were in European action last night against FC Koya of Denmark, league leaders of the Danish top division. 5-3 win on the night, 2 goals in injury time, and that sees them through 6-5 on aggregate. Now, Glasgow City have had some famous nights in European football over the years. Last night was certainly another one to add to the collection. Robbie, just how good is it to see our Scottish sides doing so well in Europe, especially with some of the men's sides not doing too well the last time they played?
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. I think that takes them into the last 16. Obviously overturning, I think, the first leg, a 2-1 defeat, and then to get through last night 6-5. Obviously, it sounded like the PZ was absolutely rocking last night. I think a full house, so fantastic to get through and then see we get in the next round, which will be interesting. But yeah, great for Scottish football. I think just to get teams that are now progressing into their latter stages, because it's been a number of years since any team's actually done it here in Scotland.
Yeah, Stephen, it's going to be quite difficult though. Of course, I mean, this is the first season we've had the Women's Europa Cup. If you look at the draw, there's Inter Milan, Eintracht Frankfurt, Sporting Lisbon, some top European sides. But it isn't the same level as the Women's Champions League, which we saw Celtic struggle in last campaign. Do you think City could mount some sort of a challenge? I'm not saying to go all the way, but do you think they could go far in this competition?
Well, one thing it doesn't really differ in with regards to the men's game is resources. I mean, resources tell everything, and I think there are certainly nations and clubs who have far bigger resources in the game, the women's game does in Scotland, but it's still quite a new entity, and I think people forget that sometimes. It really, in real terms, women's football in Scotland has really only been going properly for the last 10 years or so, since Fiona McIntyre got her foot under the table. So it's still early days, and Glasgow City have done well in the Champions League in the past. They've got a good pedigree at that level, so you'd like to think they can go a bit further, but I just think when you get to the real latter stages, that's when the teams with the big money start getting serious about it, and that's what they're going to be up against, I think.
They're leading the SWPL just now. Do you think this could be a special season for them, Stephen?
Well, it was interesting. Last season was one of the most exciting seasons in years, wasn't it? Obviously, with Hibs just going all the distance right at the end. Glasgow City have reasserted themselves, 3 points ahead of Celtic. So I think Leanne Ross is doing a decent job there, and they're looking a bit more like themselves after the kind of upstarts from the Celtic and Rangers and Hibs in recent seasons. But early days.
Brilliant, Stephen. Yeah, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this morning. Many thanks to Robbie Neilson and to Stephen McGowan, and thank you all for listening as well. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Right, that's the international break almost over. League action will resume in 2 days' time. We'll be back tomorrow with a big build-up to all of that. But for me, thank you very much for your time this morning, and goodbye.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.